I opened the ADT app just to check if rain was hitting the back porch. Instead, I saw my sister-in-law unplugging my lamps and her husband counting boxes like he owned the place. When the siren blared, they froze. And so did I, because I realized the betrayal wasn't from outside the door, but from the man I married. I forgot to tell them about ADT. They forgot to ask about boundaries. From that second, I stopped apologizing and started a war. My name is Tessa Morgan. I am 34 years old, and I am the Chief Financial Officer at Marlin Ridge Holdings, a private equity firm that doesn't tolerate mistakes. My entire life is built on precision, on forecasting risk, and on the relentless pursuit of order. In Northcrest, a city that thrives on calculated moves, I am known for my composure, my sanctuary. The place where that composure is cultivated is my new home in Stonehaven Grove. It is not a mansion, but it is a fortress, a sleek, modern structure of glass, steel, and stone, set back from the road and protected by a dense line of Italian cypress. The centerpiece, my non-negotiable, was the enclosed central courtyard. It's a box of perfect, zen-like calm, a single Japanese maple surrounded by river stones, visible only from inside the house. My office, my real office, overlooks it. The room is minimalist to the point of austerity: polished concrete floors, a single, sprawling walnut desk, and the glass wall facing the courtyard. This is where I manage 9-figure portfolios. This is where I am untouchable. The house is smart, smarter than most people. The ADT ecosystem is the central nervous system. It's not just a burglar alarm, it's a fully integrated security net. Every lock, every light, every window sensor, and every camera, inside and out, responds to my voice, my fingerprint, or the app on my phone. It is my armor, and I trusted it implicitly. On a Tuesday afternoon, at exactly 2:47 p.m., that trust was validated in the worst way possible. I was deep in a virtual review of the second quarter forecasts, dissecting inflated projections from an acquisition target. My phone, set face down on the cool desk, vibrated. Once, a single, insistent buzz. It was not a call. It was a push notification. I ignored it. My focus locked on the spreadsheet displayed on my 80-inch monitor. My colleague was explaining away a discrepancy when the phone vibrated again, this time with a specific, urgent pulse I had assigned to high-priority alerts. I muted my microphone, my apology to the team already forming. "Excuse me for one moment, gentlemen." I picked up the phone. The alert was from the ADT app. My blood, usually so temperate, turned to ice. "Intrusion detected. Front door unlocked with duplicate key." Duplicate key. The words didn't compute. There were no duplicate keys. I had two, one on my keyring and one in a biometric safe. My husband, Evan, had one. That was it. My thumb, suddenly clumsy, tapped the notification. The app opened instantly, loading the live stream from the foyer camera. The image was crystal clear, the audio sharp. And there she was, my sister-in-law, Brianna Vale. She was standing in my foyer as if she belonged there, shrugging off her coat and tossing it onto my meticulously clean entryway bench. Her husband, Caleb, was behind her, wiping his muddy shoes on the custom sisal rug. "See? I told you it was fine," Brianna said, her voice dripping with a casual arrogance that made my stomach clench. She dropped her oversized designer handbag onto the floor, the heavy clasp clattering against the stone tile. Caleb grunted, looking around with a critical eye. "It's clean. Where do you think she keeps the good stuff?" They didn't just unlock the door. They walked in. They were discussing my possessions. My calibrated, controlled silence was shattered. I felt a visceral, hot wave of violation. This was not a visit. This was an invasion. Then, I heard it through the phone's speaker, a quiet, insistent beep. The ADT system was armed in away mode. They had used a key, but they didn't have the code. Beep, beep, beep. The countdown had begun. They had 60 seconds. "What's that noise?" Caleb asked, his head snapping toward the keypad on the wall. "Oh, crap," Brianna hissed. "The alarm. Evan said he turned it off. Quick, the code. What was it? His birthday?" Caleb lunged for the keypad, his thick fingers stabbing at the glowing screen. Beep, beep, beep. I watched him type in Evan's birthday. The system chimed, a polite, negative bloop. "Invalid code," the automated voice announced. "Try her birthday," Brianna shrieked, her composure cracking. Beep, beep. The tempo was faster now. Caleb frantically typed in my birthday. Bloop. Invalid code. "The dog's name, their anniversary." "They don't have a dog, you idiot." Beep. "It's not working," Caleb yelled, slapping the panel with his open palm. B. The sound cut off, replaced by a noise so violent, so piercing, that I instinctively flinched, even though it was only coming from my phone. The internal siren, an ear-splitting, disorienting shriek designed to cause pain. Calibrated at over 100 decibels, it filled every corner of my house, a technological scream of rage. Through the shrieking, a new voice boomed from the overhead speaker system, the voice of the ADT monitoring center, loud enough to be heard over the alarm. "This is ADT security. An alarm has been triggered. Please state the security phrase immediately." On the camera, I watched them physically recoil. Caleb clapped his hands over his ears, his face pale and stupid with shock. Brianna, however, did something that stopped my heart. She ignored the alarm, she ignored the voice, she pulled out her own phone, pressed it to her ear, and spoke, her voice a desperate, angry whisper that the camera's microphone caught perfectly. "He lied. The alarm's going off. Just come on. She's in a meeting. She'll never know until we're in. Get the truck up the drive. Now." "She's in a meeting. Get the truck." My mind, trained for rapid analysis, began to connect the data points. Duplicate key, a precise understanding of my work schedule, a truck. My fingers flew across the app, switching camera feeds. I selected driveway, exterior. The image loaded. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a pickup. It was a small U-Haul, the 15-footer, parked at the end of my long, paved driveway, its hazard lights flashing stupidly in the afternoon light. As I watched, the bay door rolled up. 2 men in dirty jeans hopped out of the cab. The back of the truck was full. I could see a queen-sized mattress wrapped in plastic. I could see the dark wood legs of a disassembled dining room table. I could see stacks and stacks of brown cardboard boxes. And on the side of the closest one, written in thick black marker, was a single word that sealed their fate. Master. They weren't coming to visit. They weren't coming to borrow sugar. They were moving into my master bedroom. While I was still processing the raw audacity of the label, a new text message banner slid across the top of my screen. It was from ADT's automated system. "Security phrase mismatch. Active alarm. Northcrest police have been notified and are en route. Est. Arrival. 4 minutes." I stared at the screen, at the men hesitating by the truck, clearly hearing the siren blaring from the house. I looked at the live feed of Brianna, who was now frantically waving her arms at the front door, gesturing for them to come in anyway. I saw Caleb, still cowering by the keypad, a picture of useless panic. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a desperate plea for help. This was a calculated, premeditated occupation. Brianna, my husband's sister, a woman I had hosted for Thanksgiving just 5 months prior. Caleb, her perpetually useless husband, who had complimented my taste in wine. They were not family, seeking shelter. They were squatters, armed with a key supplied by a trader. My focus returned to the virtual meeting I was still technically attending. On the monitor, my colleagues were looking at my frozen, muted icon with mild confusion. I could hear one of them say, "Tessa, did we lose you?" I unmuted my microphone. My voice, when it came out, was perfectly level, devoid of the hurricane of rage and violations swirling inside me. "Gentlemen, I apologize. A critical asset management issue has just arisen at my primary residence. I will have to reschedule. I will email you my notes within the hour. I didn't wait for a reply. I ended the call. I closed the laptop. The house in Stonehaven Grove was my fortress. Brianna and Caleb, with Evan's key, had breached the outer wall. They thought they were facing a preoccupied homeowner who could be bullied into submission, who would fold under the pressure of the word family. They were wrong. They were facing Tessa Morgan, the CFO of Marlin Ridge, and I was about to conduct a full, hostile, and legally fortified audit of their entire lives. The police were just the first step. This was not a domestic dispute. This was a hostile takeover attempt, and I do not lose takeovers. The sirens from my phone speaker had been replaced by the sirens in my head, a screaming, high-pitched wail of betrayal. The Northcrest PD was at my house. Evan's sister was being escorted off my porch, and my husband was the one who had given them the key. My fingers were steady as I dialed his number. He was in Chicago for a national sales conference, probably schmoozing clients at some overpriced steakhouse. He picked up on the third ring, his voice frustratingly normal, loud with background chatter. "Tess, everything okay? I'm just about to head into the dinner." I kept my voice flat, an ice-cold delivery of data. "Evan, Brianna and Caleb are at the house. They used your key to let themselves in while the alarm was on. The police are there right now. A U-Haul is parked in the driveway. Did you know about this?" There was a pause. I heard him move, the background noise dulling as he stepped somewhere quieter. When he spoke, his voice was laced with annoyance, not apology. "Oh, God. Did she really? I told them to wait until I got back. Look, calm down. It's not a big deal. I told them they could stay for a bit, just until they get back on their feet. I told them they could stay a bit." The casual pronouns hit me like a physical slap. "You told them they could stay? In our house?" "Yes, stay," he said, his patience clearly thinning, as if I were a difficult employee and not his wife. "They got evicted. Tess, the landlord's a jerk. They had nowhere to go. I said they could use the guest wing for a few weeks." The guest wing, the U-Haul box labeled Master flashed in my mind, the truck full of furniture, the attempt to bypass my work schedule. "A few weeks. Evan?" "They showed up with a moving truck. They tried to sneak in while I was in a meeting you clearly told them about. They were moving into the master bedroom. You gave your sister a key to my house without asking me?" "Our house. Tessa," he snapped. "And yes, I gave her a key. She's my sister. She's family. What was I supposed to do? Let them sleep in their car? You're overreacting. Just call off the cops. It's embarrassing." The police were notified automatically by ADT because your sister and her husband do not know the security phrase, because they are not supposed to be there. "Just handle it. Tessa, I have to go. This dinner is important." He didn't say, "I love you." He didn't ask if I was okay. He hung up. I stared at the black screen of my phone. The disconnect was so profound, it left me breathless. He had redistributed a key to my fortress. He had prioritized his sister's manufactured crisis over my security, my property, and my consent. He had reduced a coordinated home invasion to a simple overreaction. My phone rang again, almost immediately. The caller ID read, Meredith, his mother, the matriarch, the queen of emotional manipulation. I pressed accept, and on my phone's interface, I pressed record. "Tessa, darling." Her voice was a wave of thick, feigned concern. "Evan just called me. He sounded so distressed. What on earth is happening? He said you called the police on poor Brianna." "Meredith," I said, my voice still a flat line. "Brianna and Caleb used a key Evan gave them without my knowledge to break into my house. The alarm went off. ADT dispatched the police, as they are paid to do." "Oh, stop with that break-in nonsense, dear," she tisked, the sweetness curdling instantly into condescension. "They are family. Evan told them they could come. You know they've been having such a hard time. That landlord was a monster." "They arrived with a U-Haul, Meredith. They were moving their furniture into my bedroom." "And what's so wrong with that?" she countered, her voice rising. "My goodness, Tessa, You have so much. That house is enormous. Far too big for just 2 people. You have 4 extra bedrooms. What does it cost you to help your family? When I was your age, we understood that. We helped each other. We didn't call the police on our own blood. The word, family. It was their master key. The one that supposedly unlocked everything. It was their universal justification. Their pass to ignore laws, boundaries, and basic human decency in their world. Family meant that which is yours is also mine to take. It was a blank check drawn on my resources, my time, and now, my sanctuary. My marriage to Evan hadn't made me a daughter-in-law. It had made me a target resource. My house, my rules, Meredith, and my rule is that people do not get to occupy my home without my permission. You're being cold. Tessa, so cold. This is what happens when you spend all your time with numbers instead of people. This is going to break your husband's heart. He broke my trust, I said, and I disconnected the call. I saved the recording. Meredith call 1, MP3. My hands were shaking now, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. It was the body's physical reaction to identifying a threat. I went to my laptop and, in the ADT portal, I began downloading the event log, showing the exact timestamp of the duplicate key entry at 2:47 p.m., the video file from the foyer camera, the audio file from the two-way speaker. I saved them all to a secure, encrypted folder on my personal drive. As if on cue. My phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring twice, activated the recording function, and answered. Hello? Tessa? It was a shriek. Brianna. What the hell is wrong with you, you sick bitch? You called the cops on me. You humiliated me in front of this entire neighborhood. You entered my home without authorization, Brianna. That is a crime. A crime? Your husband gave me the key. He invited me. We were supposed to be in and settle before you even got home. But you and your stupid, rich bitch alarm system had to ruin everything. We are standing on the sidewalk with all our stuff. The movers left. The neighbors are staring. This is all your fault. I was silent, listening to the pure, undiluted entitlement. She wasn't sorry. She was angry she got caught. Do you know how embarrassing this is? She screamed. Caleb is having a panic attack. You probably terrified him. I ought to sue you for emotional distress. The audacity was breathtaking. She breaks into my home and I am the one liable for her distress. But I'm willing to forget it, she said, her voice shifting to a low conspiratorial haggle. You caused this. You can fix it. You call the police off right now and tell them it was a misunderstanding. And you're going to pay for the movers. And you're going to pay for the U-Haul for the day. And you're going to pay for our hotel. Since you clearly don't want us in your precious, empty house, it's the least you can do after what you put us through. Send me $5,000 and we can make this all go away. A demand. Extortion. Brianna, I said, my voice so quiet it made her pause. Are you demanding money from me? I'm telling you what you owe us for this humiliation. I am recording this conversation, Brianna. Everything you just said has been saved. Do not ever call me again. I hung up. I saved the file. Brianna call 1, MP3. My phone immediately lit up with incoming texts. Evan. Call your mother-in-law back and apologize. Now. Brianna is hysterical. You humiliated her. Why are you doing this? Why are you blowing this up? Just let them stay in the guest house for a week. What is your problem? You are turning my family into criminals. Tessa, this is on you. I read the last message twice. You are turning my family into criminals. No, they had done that all by themselves. I was just the one filing the report. I leaned back in my chair. I was in my corporate office, a glass box high above the city, but in my mind, I was in my home office, sitting at my walnut desk, looking at the courtyard, my safe place, my zone of control. I thought of Brianna and Caleb standing in my foyer, their presence a contamination. I thought of their muddy shoes on my rug. I opened the audio file from the ADT feed and played it back. Where do you think she keeps the good stuff? Caleb's voice. They weren't just moving in. They were assessing. They were appraising my life. They were looking at the things I had worked for, the order I had built, and seeing only dollar signs, things to be used or taken. My minimalist decor wasn't a choice. To them, it was a lack of good stuff to steal. My home wasn't a sanctuary. It was an asset to be occupied. The disgust was overwhelming. It was a physical sensation, a desire to scrub my entire house with bleach, to burn the rug they'd stood on. The sense of violation was absolute. This was the swamp, the accusations, the guilt trips, the family obligation, the emotional demands. This was the battlefield they had chosen, and they were experts at fighting in the mud. Evan wanted me to argue with him about his mother's feelings. Brianna wanted me to pay for her hurt pride. But I am a chief financial officer. I do not deal in feelings. I deal in data. I looked at the folder on my screen. I had timestamps from ADT. I had video of the trespass. I had audio of the attempted occupation. I had a saved recording of a demand for $5,000. I had text messages from my husband admitting he provided the key for an unpermitted stay. They wanted to argue about emotion. I would respond with exhibits. My decision was made. It was as clean and sharp as a closing entry. I picked up my phone one more time. My hands were perfectly still. I did not call Evan back. I did not call Meredith. I scrolled to L in my contacts. Lila Cortez, my best friend from my MBA program, and the sharpest litigation attorney in North Crest. I pressed the call button. Lila, I said. When she answered, I have a situation. It's a trespass, an attempted unlawful occupancy, with a side of extortion, and it's complicated. It's family. There was a brief pause. Tessa, Lila's voice came back, already cutting to the point. Family just means the stakes are higher. Tell me everything, and tell me you have proof. I have a folder, I said, looking at my screen. Let's go to war. I didn't reply to Evan's frantic, accusing texts. The time for emotional debate was over. Engaging with him was a liability, a drain on resources, and I was now in preservation mode. The hot shock of betrayal had cooled into something far more dangerous, cold, clear, analytical rage. I was no longer a wife. I was a chief financial officer, and my primary asset had been breached due to catastrophic internal negligence. I hit Lila Cortez's number. She was my closest friend from my MBA program, a woman who had clawed her way to a partnership at North Crest's most ruthless litigation firm. She didn't believe in losing. She answered on the second ring, her voice already sharp. Tessa Morgan, this doesn't sound like a social call. It isn't, I said, my voice flat. I need to retain you. I have an active situation at the Stonehaven house, criminal trespass, attempted unlawful occupancy, and extortion. There was a brief, loaded silence, then the faint click-clack of her keyboard. Go, she said. I gave her the data, omitting all emotion. I recited the timestamps from the ADT log, the duplicate key, the police dispatch, the U-Haul, the cardboard box marked Master, Evan's admission on the phone, and finally, Brianna's shrieked demand for $5,000 to make this go away. Lila didn't offer sympathy. She offered strategy. Understood. This is clean. Their narrative is family misunderstanding. Our narrative is premeditated criminal act. We stick to the facts. The law is on your side, Tessa, but only if you are methodical. What is the procedure? I asked, already pulling up a new document on my laptop to take notes. The procedure is a firewall, Lila said, her voice cutting through my anxiety. And it starts now. First, you are not going home, not yet. You are driving directly to the North Crest Police Department headquarters on Redwood. You will file a formal police report. You will reference the ADT dispatch call number. You will provide them a copy of the ADT event log and the high-definition video file from your foyer camera. That video is your primary, unimpeachable witness. What about the audio recordings? I asked, thinking of Brianna's shriek and Meredith's cloying voice. We hold those, Lila said firmly. We don't give the police our extortion evidence yet. That is for civil court, or for the district attorney if they try to file charges against you. For now, the video is enough to establish the trespass. Second, while you are at the station, you will file for an emergency, temporary no-contact directive, a restraining order, against both Brianna Vale and Caleb Vale. You cite the trespass and the video evidence of their unauthorized entry. You are a homeowner, alone, whose sanctuary was invaded. They will grant it. Third, your homeowners association, Lila continued. You need to email the Stonehaven board immediately. Factual, neutral. An attempted unauthorized entry occurred at my property. Police were dispatched. The individuals have been removed. I am pursuing all legal remedies. Please ensure all security patrols are aware that no one besides myself is authorized for entry. You are establishing a paper trail and putting your HOA on notice. You are the sole authority for that property. Fourth, and this is non-negotiable, you must assume all physical security is compromised. Your husband is a clear vector of risk. I want a 24-hour locksmith at that house immediately. Change every lock, every deadbolt, every patio door, the garage keypad, the courtyard gate. I want Evan's key to be nothing but a useless piece of scrap metal by the time he lands in Northcrest. And the alarm? I asked, my fingers already flying, logging into my ADT master portal on my computer. Way ahead of you, Lila said. Check your user permissions. I clicked the tab. There they were. Tessa Morgan, owner, admin, and right below it, Evan Morgan, user, admin. He had access to everything, the cameras, the logs, the ability to arm and disarm, the ability to add other users. My stomach clenched. He could have been watching me this whole time. He could have given them a user code. He's an admin, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Not anymore. He's not, Lila replied. Revoke his credentials. Now, Tessa. My mouse moved to his name. I clicked Edit User. I clicked Revoke Access. A small box popped up. Are you sure you want to permanently remove this user? I pressed Confirm without breathing. His name vanished. He's out, I said. Good. Now, add me, Lila Cortez. Legal counsel. Grant me full admin rights. I want to be able to pull logs if they try anything else. From here on, I am your only other user. I did as she said. The fortress walls were going back up. But this time, I was the only one with the master plan. Next, Lila said, we secure more evidence. This was not spontaneous. I guarantee it. Call ADT's corporate security line, not the standard monitors. Tell them you are on a recorded line with counsel, and you are reporting a targeted attempt to breach your account. Ask for all call logs related to your account for the last 72 hours. I dialed the number on my other line, putting the ADT supervisor on speaker for Lila to hear. I explained the situation, my voice the perfect image of a concerned, high-value client. The supervisor put me on hold. The silence stretched for 2 long minutes. When he returned, his voice was professional, but tense. Yes, Ms. Morgan, I am seeing a flag. We received 3 calls yesterday afternoon from a number not currently associated with your account. The caller, a male, identified himself as your husband, Evan Morgan, and attempted to acquire the system's verbal security phrase. My heart stopped. This wasn't negligence. This was conspiracy. Evan hadn't just given them a key. He had actively tried to get the password to disarm the entire system for them. What happened? I managed to ask. Our operator followed protocol, the supervisor said. The caller failed the secondary verification questions, which you said is your mother's maiden name. The operator logged the attempt as suspicious failed verification and terminated the call. No information was given out. I need that audio, Lila's voice boomed over the speaker, making the supervisor jump. This is Lila Cortez, counsel for Ms. Morgan. We are formally requesting that audio recording and its transcript, along with the audio from today's alarm event at 2:47 p.m. They are evidence in an active police investigation. Send a digital copy to my office within the hour. The supervisor, recognizing the legal threat, Agreed immediately. One last thing. Tessa, Leia said after I'd hung up with ADT. The moving company. You got the name from the truck? Northcrest Movers, I said. A local company. Perfect. They are your star witness. They are the objective third party that blows up the "we were just visiting" defense. They were hired. They have a contract. I am sending a runner to their office right now with a preservation notice and a subpoena for their work order. We are going to get the invoice, the inventory list, and the name of the person who paid the deposit. We are going to prove, unequivocally, that this was a full move-in, not a quick stay. I finally allowed myself to exhale. This was a plan. This was data. This was control. What is your retainer? I asked. I was already logged into my private wealth account. The one Evan didn't know existed. The one I funded with my own bonuses. $50,000, Leia said, without apology. This isn't a simple cease and desist. This is a full-spectrum domestic war. We are filing for damages, for the cost of the security refit, and we are preparing a defamation suit for when they inevitably try to smear you, and that's all separate from the divorce, which I assume is now in play. It is, I said. I initiated the wire transfer, $50,000, the cost of reclaiming my life. The money is being transferred from my private accounts. I am establishing a separate legal fund for this. He will not have access to it, and he will not see it coming. Good, Leia said. The notification chimed on her end. Retainer received. You are officially my client. Go to the police station. Go to the locksmith. Do not speak to Evan. Do not speak to his mother. You forward every text, every email, every voicemail to me. I am your voice now. I stood up, grabbing my keys and my purse. I'm on my way. Tessa, she said, stopping me. Her voice lost its legal chill and became the voice of my friend. Be ready. You are doing this the right way, the clean way, the legal way. They are not. They are going to fight dirty. They are going to come at you in the court of public opinion. They will use the family card. They will call you heartless, cold, a rich bitch. They will use Evan to paint you as an unstable, cruel wife. They are going to drag you into the mud. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of my office window. The woman staring back was not hysterical. She was not a victim. She was a CEO about to liquidate a toxic asset. Let them, I said. They can have the mud. I'll take the high ground. And the house. The 2 days after the incident were a blur of cold, procedural action. I moved from my corporate office to a secure suite at the Northcrest Grand, a place of sterile anonymity. Leia had forbidden me from returning to the Stonehaven house until the new high-security locks and a supplementary camera sweep were complete. My house, my fortress, was now a crime scene, and I was in legal exile. I did not speak to Evan. His texts, which had morphed from angry demands to pathetic, pleading questions, were forwarded, unread, directly to Leia. I worked. I analyzed third-quarter projections. I held remote meetings. And in the background, my real focus was on the silent, digital war Leia was waging on my behalf. Leia, it turned out, was a master of digital excavation. She didn't just practice law. She hunted for data. She worked with a forensic investigator, a man she simply called Ghost, who could pull data trails from the ether. My $50,000 retainer had bought me a small, private army. The first domino fell on Wednesday morning. Less than 24 hours after the break-in, Leia forwarded me an email. Subject: Exhibit A. Northcrest Movers. Her email read, Tessa, good morning. Attached is the subpoenaed work order. It is, as we suspected, a full-service residential move-in. The deposit of $500 was paid in cash, but the interesting part is the inventory list. Please see page 3. They photographed the items for insurance purposes. I opened the attachment. It was a grainy PDF scan, but the image was clear. It was the contents of the U-Haul, cataloged by the movers, and there, item 034, was a king-sized, cherry wood sleigh bed. Item 035, matching nightstands, 2. Item 036, hers, dresser set. This was not guest room furniture. This was a complete master bedroom suite. The work order listed the destination address, my address, and noted in the comments section, place all items from inventory 034037 in master bedroom. They were replacing my bed, I said out loud to the empty hotel room. The audacity was so profound, it was almost impressive. Lila's email concluded, the timeline is already working for us. This booking was made 6 days ago. 6 days. While Evan was kissing me goodbye before his important Chicago trip, he knew his sister was preparing to move into my bed. The next piece came from the Stonehaven Homeowners Association. After receiving Lila's formal notice, the HOA manager, a meticulous woman named Mrs. Petrov, had done her own digging. She called Lila directly. Mrs. Petrov just confirmed. Lila's text message read, a woman identifying herself as Brianna Morgan, note the last name, called the management office last week. My blood ran cold. Morgan. She was already trying to steal my name. Lila continued. She asked how to register for a new resident parking pass for 2 vehicles. She also asked about the procedure for getting a new RFID tag for the community gate. Mrs. Petrov informed her that only the owner of record, Tessa Morgan, could authorize such changes. Brianna allegedly became very hostile, stating she was the new lady of the house and that the current owner was in agreement. This was not a temporary stay. This was a hostile takeover. But the digital trail was just beginning. Ghost, Lila's investigator, had been given Evan's iCloud credentials, which I still had from our family plan. It was a long shot, but Lila suspected that if this was a conspiracy, they were arrogant enough to be sloppy. At 5 p.m. on Wednesday, Lila sent me a password-protected link to a secure server. Open this, read, and breathe, she instructed. It was a chain of emails between Brianna's burner email address and Evan's personal account. The subject line, The Move. My eyes scanned the text. Brianna, are you sure she'll be in that stupid budget meeting all afternoon? I don't want to walk in and have her there. She'll freak. Evan's reply. Sent from his iPhone just 4 hours before the invasion. I told you. Tess is locked into her Q2 forecast review. She never leaves those. She will not be home before 7 p.m. The alarm is the only problem. I tried to get the damn password, but they wouldn't give it to me. Just go in, punch in my birthday, and if it beeps, just ignore it and get the truck unloaded. She can't do anything once you're in. It's family. And then, the email that made my vision swim. Brianna. Fine, but I'm going for the master. I deserve a nice room after that slumlord. You can tell her later. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Evan did not reply. He didn't object. His silence was his consent. My phone rang. It was Lila. Did you read it? I read it, I said, my voice hollow. We have him, she said simply. We have intent, conspiracy, and his direct complicity. His legal position is destroyed. But wait, it gets better. Ghost hadn't just stopped at Evan's iCloud. He had run a check on public utilities. Yesterday morning, at approximately 10 a.m., Lila explained, an online form was submitted to the Northcrest Water and Power Authority. It was a request to transfer the account at your Stonehaven address from Tessa Morgan to Brianna Vale. They used Brianna's social security number. It was flagged for a security review because the name didn't match the deed, so it didn't go through, but they tried. They didn't just want my house. They wanted my name on the bills. And, Lila continued, her voice grim, they filed a change of address form with the United States Postal Service online, a permanent change, to have all mail for Brianna and Caleb Vale forwarded to your address. Effective immediately, they were planting a flag. Tessa. They were establishing residency. This was the part of the law I didn't know, the part where family becomes a legal weapon. If they had received one piece of mail, if that utility transfer had gone through, they could have claimed tenants' rights. It would have taken me months, maybe a year, and thousands of dollars in eviction court to get them out. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated, deliberate plan to steal my home from under me, using arcane tenancy laws as their crowbar. "Now for the visual aids," Lila said. "The locksmith is done. I'm at the house. I'm pulling the rest of the camera feeds from the local server." She sent me a new file. It was from the camera on the back porch, overlooking the courtyard. It was time-stamped from the week before, during the one weekend I was at a leadership retreat, and Evan was home alone. The video showed Evan and Caleb. Evan was holding a beer. Caleb was holding a yellow measuring tape. I watched, sickened, as Caleb measured the width of the sliding glass door leading from the dining room. I heard his voice, captured clearly by the camera's microphone. "Yeah, this is wide enough. Our new cabinets will clear this easy. We can rip out that ugly built-in thing she has." Her ugly built-in, my custom walnut shelving, our cabinets. "And finally," Lila said, "a gift from the neighborhood watch." Mr. Alder, my retired, drone enthusiast neighbor, had been practicing his maneuvers on Tuesday. He had captured 4 minutes of beautiful high-definition 4K video. It showed the Northcrest Movers truck parked brazenly in the red zone, blocking a fire hydrant. It showed Brianna, phone to her ear, screaming at the movers, and it showed Caleb, running back and forth from the truck, carrying boxes into my garage, which they had accessed using the keypad code Evan had also apparently supplied. Lila was quiet for a moment. I heard her sorting papers on her end. "So," she said, her voice crisp and final, "let's review the timeline we will be presenting to the judge. 1 week ago, Brianna and Evan conspire via email. Brianna calls the HOA to claim residency under a false name. Evan and Caleb are on camera measuring your doorways for their own furniture. 6 days ago, they book the full-service move-in for your master bedroom. 3 days ago, Evan tries and fails to get the ADT security phrase through social engineering. 2 days ago, Brianna files to have your utilities and her mail transferred to the house. The day of the event, Evan confirms your meeting schedule. Brianna and Caleb execute the plan. They are filmed trespassing, attempting to disable the alarm, and are recorded by ADT. Brianna is then recorded extorting you for $5,000. She paused. "Tessa, this is not a family dispute. This is a failed coup. Their defense that this was a misunderstanding and that they were just staying temporarily is not just a lie. It's a provable, documented, multi-part fabrication. We have them on trespass, attempted fraud, and conspiracy. They didn't just ring the doorbell, Tessa. They laid siege to your life." I looked at the email chain again. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. "They won't be asking for forgiveness," I said to Lila. "And they will never get permission. Burn them to the ground." Lila had warned me they would fight dirty. I had mistakenly assumed she meant in court. The first blow came not from a lawyer, but from a Facebook post. Evan, blocked from my phone and my life, had returned to the one platform he truly understood, the court of public opinion. He hadn't tagged me, but he didn't need to. Our mutual friends, his extended family, and a horrifying number of Northcrest acquaintances were all there to see his public performance of the grieving husband. He posted a picture of himself and Brianna from a childhood Christmas, all gap-toothed smiles and terrible sweaters. The caption was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. "I have always believed that family is a verb," he wrote. "It's what you do for people. I've been heartbroken this week to learn that my wife, Tessa, does not share this belief. My sister, Brianna, a wonderful mother and human being, fell on hard times. She and her husband lost their apartment to a predatory landlord. I offered them our guest room. I didn't think I had to ask permission to help my own sister. For this act of basic human decency, my wife called the police on my family. She had them thrown onto the street, humiliated them, and has now filed restraining orders to keep me from my own sister. Please send prayers and good thoughts to Brianna, who is suffering from extreme emotional distress and is now being legally terrorized by a woman I thought I knew." It was brilliant. In 300 words, he had painted himself as the martyr, Brianna as the victim, and me as the unstable, cruel wife Lila had predicted. The comments were a tidal wave of sympathy for him and vitriol for me. Disgusting. Heartless. That's what happens when you marry a calculator instead of a woman. I forwarded the screenshot to Lila. Her response was immediate. Do not engage. This is Exhibit B for the defamation suit. He just handed us the rope. But the poison was already spreading. The battlefield had expanded. This was no longer just about my house. It was about my name. The second blow landed 48 hours later, not on social media, but in my professional sanctuary. My boss, Arthur Sterling, the CEO of Marlin Ridge Holdings, called me into his office at 4 p.m. Arthur was an old-guard finance man who valued two things above all: profit and stability. "Tessa, close the door," he said, his voice uncharacteristically flat. He gestured to a single sheet of paper on his desk. "This arrived via messenger this morning. It is anonymous." I picked it up. It was typed, cheap printer paper, no letterhead. "To the board of Marlin Ridge," it began. "We are concerned employees who must remain anonymous for fear of retaliation. You should know that your CFO, Tessa Morgan, is in the midst of a severe personal crisis. She is exhibiting extreme, erratic, and paranoid behavior. She has recently thrown her own family out onto the street, involved the police in a domestic dispute, and is suing her husband's family out of spite. She is unstable, vindictive, and not in a fit state to be managing the financial health of your company. We are worried her personal vendetta will spill over into her professional judgment. You need to investigate before she causes real damage." I read it twice. The words extreme, erratic, unstable were designed to trigger alarms in a risk-averse corporate environment. This wasn't Brianna's emotional shrieking. This was targeted. This was designed to cost me my job. "Arthur," I said, placing the letter back on his desk. My voice was calm, my hands steady. "This is a malicious fabrication. It is part of a coordinated smear campaign by my husband's family, stemming from a criminal matter at my home." "A criminal matter?" he asked, his eyebrows rising. "Last Tuesday, my sister-in-law and her husband attempted to unlawfully occupy my home while I was at work. They used a key my husband gave them without my consent and brought a moving truck with the intent to permanently move into my master bedroom. The entire event, including their conspiracy with my husband, is documented on video, in email, and via ADT security logs. I have filed a police report for trespass and a restraining order, which was granted." I paused, letting the facts land. "The individuals involved are now retaliating by attacking my reputation. My attorney, Lila Cortez, is already drafting a cease and desist letter to my husband for a libelous social media post he made yesterday. This letter is clearly their next escalation." Arthur stared at me, his gaze analytical. He was assessing me, not as a person, but as an asset. Was I now a liability? "I will have Ms. Cortez send you a summary of the facts, along with the police report number and a copy of the restraining order," I said. "My personal life is under attack, but I will not allow it to be weaponized against this firm. My work is, and will remain, unimpeachable." He nodded, slowly. "See that you do. I don't care about your domestic squabbles. Tessa, I care about our investors. Keep this contained." "It will be," I said. I walked back to my office, closed the door, and finally let the adrenaline surge. They had come for my career. They had tried to paint me as the crazy woman, the oldest trick in the book. I called Lila. They sent an anonymous letter to my CEO, accusing me of being unstable and erratic, Evan or Brianna, trying to get me fired. Lila's curse was sharp and creative. "Okay, this is war. Send me the letter. We're adding it to the pile. In the meantime, I am sending the cease and desist to Evan's new address and his work email. He wants to play in the professional sphere? Fine." The pressure was immense, a two-front war. My reputation was being shelled on social media, and my corporate flank was being probed for weakness. Then came the third front, my community. The Stonehaven HOA summoned me to an informal dispute hearing. Mrs. Petrov, the manager, was polite but firm. Ms. Morgan, we have received a formal complaint from a Mr. Evan Morgan on behalf of his sister, Ms. Vale. They allege they were aggressively and improperly removed from your property while visiting, and that our security patrol, which responded to the ADT alarm, escalated the situation. This was their attempt to turn my own HOA against me. I arrived at the meeting in the community clubhouse carrying a single, slim leather portfolio. The 3 board members sat at one end of a long table. I sat at the other. "Thank you for seeing me," I began. "I understand you received a complaint. I believe this will clear things up." I did not make an emotional appeal. I gave them a presentation. I handed them the ADT log, time-stamped. Exhibit A, the unauthorized entry using a duplicate key at 2:47 p.m. I handed them a printout of the Northcrest PD report. Exhibit B, the official police report for criminal trespass. I handed them a copy of the granted restraining order. Exhibit C, the no-contact order, barring Ms. Vale and her husband from the property. Finally, I handed them a copy of Brianna's attempt to register for a resident parking pass under my name. And Exhibit D, the email from your own management office, confirming Ms. Vale attempted to falsely establish residency last week. I concluded, this was not a visit, it was a planned illegal occupation of my home, in violation of my property rights and multiple HOA bylaws. The ADT system and your security patrol performed exactly as they were designed to. I expect the HOA to support a resident who was the target of a crime, not the perpetrators. Their faces, which had been set in neutral, concerned lines, were now cold. They looked at the evidence. They looked at each other. The board president cleared his throat. "Ms. Morgan, thank you. This is comprehensive. We were not aware of these facts. The HOA considers this matter closed. We will, of course, be issuing a formal warning to Mr. Morgan that his complaint is baseless." One front secured, but they were not done. Brianna, having failed with the police, the HOA, and now the anonymous letter, went for the guerrilla tactic. My friend Kara, in the marketing department at Marlin Ridge, messaged me on our internal chat. "Tess, this is weird, but you need to know, a woman named Brianna Vale just tried to connect with me on LinkedIn, and she's messaging other people in the company, Sarah in sales, Mike in data." "What is she saying?" I typed, my fingers cold. I have her message open. She's saying, "Hi, I know you work with Tessa Morgan. I am her sister-in-law. I feel it's my duty to warn her colleagues that she is not well. She is having a mental breakdown and is dangerously persecuting her family. We are all terrified for her and what she might do next. If you care about her, you should try to get her help." My entire team, my colleagues, she was poisoning the well, one direct message at a time, painting me as a ticking time bomb. I screenshot the message. I sent it to Lila. I then did what I do best. I compartmentalized. I sat back, closed my eyes, and built a new fortress inside my own head. First, I shored up my mental health. I found a therapist, a high-performance psychologist who specialized in executives. I booked 3 short-term sessions. "I am not here for a breakthrough," I told her. "I am here for tools. I need strategies to manage extreme external pressure and maintain peak cognitive function." She gave me breathing exercises. She gave me detachment techniques. It was tactical, not emotional. Second, I reinforced my home. I had ADT technicians come back. We didn't just change the codes. We rebuilt the architecture. We partitioned the system. The main house was one zone. The detached garage, another, my office, a third. Each had its own perimeter. We added glass break sensors to every window, and we rewrote the protocols. Any alert, any single sensor, would now send a simultaneous smart alert directly to my phone and to Lila's. She was now, legally and technologically, my first line of defense. I moved back into the house on Friday night. It was sterile. smelling of the deep cleaning service I'd hired. The new locks felt heavy and solid in my hand. I stood in the foyer and set the alarm. The keypad chirped, its voice familiar but its code new. My new passphrase, the one I'd set with the technician. My house, my rules. The next week, I went to work. It was the end of the financial quarter. It was hell. We were closing the books, finalizing the SEC filings, and preparing for the investor call. The pressure was suffocating, and I had never been more grateful. The chaos of the quarter end was a welcome shield. The demands of my job were pure, logical, and absolute. They required every ounce of my discipline. I used that discipline as armor. While Evan's family was throwing emotional bombs, I was in my office, immersed in spreadsheets that obeyed my commands. I was reconciling accounts that balanced to the penny. I was modeling risk for multi-million-dollar investments. I worked with a relentless, focused energy. My team, seeing the concerned LinkedIn messages, saw only a CFO who was more precise and demanding than ever. My erratic behavior was finding a 4-cent discrepancy in a billion-dollar ledger. My instability was working for 16 hours straight to perfect the quarterly report. I was winning, not by fighting, but by excelling. But as I sat in my office late one night, the city lights of Northcrest sprawling below me, I looked at the 3 open windows on my monitor. One held the final quarterly report. The second held Lia's latest email, detailing Brianna's new motion. The third held the ADT portal, its status a comforting, solid green. I realized I couldn't exist like this forever. I couldn't be a CFO and a full-time legal combatant. This chaos, this constant, low-grade warfare, was a distraction. It was inefficient. It was a drain on my most valuable asset, my focus. This looping cycle of attack and defense had to end. They were throwing rocks. I needed to drop a bomb. This couldn't be won by degrees. It needed a final, decisive, an absolute conclusion. It needed a full stop. The end of quarter chaos was my armor, but it was also a countdown. As the final reports were filed and the investor call was successfully navigated, a new, unsettling silence fell. The adrenaline of my work crisis faded, leaving only the cold, sharp reality of the legal one. Evan was silent, his cease and desist apparently effective. Brianna's LinkedIn messages had stopped. The quiet was, in its own way, more terrifying than the noise. It was the air pulling back before the wave. The wave hit in the form of a registered letter, delivered by courier to my office. It was not from Lila. It was from the law offices of Parker Sloan. I had never heard of him, but the thick, cream-colored envelope felt heavy, expensive, and hostile. I signed for it, my hand steady, and carried it back to my desk. I slid it open with a steel letter opener. It was a civil summons. Brianna Vale was suing me. I read the filing, my CFO mind automatically parsing the legal jargon into data points. She was suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress. She claimed the ADT siren, at over 100 decibels, had caused severe and lasting acoustic trauma to her and her husband. She claimed the public spectacle of the police arriving, an event I had orchestrated, had caused irreparable harm to her reputation in the community, resulting in public humiliation, anxiety, and an inability to find new housing. They were, in effect, blaming the alarm for catching them. And then, the demand. Brianna and Caleb were seeking damages in the amount of $25,000. They were also petitioning the court for a mandatory injunction requiring me to issue a full public apology on all my social media platforms for the misunderstanding. It was breathtaking. It was a victim impact statement from the person who had held the crowbar. I scanned the document again. Tucked into the exhibits was a sworn affidavit. My stomach tightened. It was from Evan. In 2 pages of self-serving, sanctimonious prose, he swore under oath that he had given full and unconditional permission for Brianna and Caleb to reside at our home. He referred to them as temporary guests, whom he had invited as a cohabitant and spouse. He painted my response as an isolated, hysterical, and disproportionate reaction, and stated that my refusal to communicate had forced this legal escalation. He was trying to retroactively create a license to occupy, using his status as my husband as the legal basis. I immediately forwarded a scan to Lila. My email was one word: thoughts? Her reply came in 5 minutes. He's an idiot, and they are desperate. My office, 6 p.m. When I walked into Lila's conference room, she wasn't smiling. She was in full litigation mode. The long, polished table was empty except for 2 files. One was the new lawsuit. The other was a thick, expanding folder labeled Morgan v. Vale. "Parker Sloan," Lila said, tapping the summons. "He's not a real lawyer. He's a media parasite. He specializes in high-profile, low-substance cases. He files outrageous claims, leaks them to the press, and strong-arms a settlement before a judge can ever see his shoddy paperwork. This isn't a lawsuit. It's a press release." "What about Evan's affidavit?" I asked. "He's swearing he gave them permission as a spouse." Lila actually laughed. It was a short, sharp, humorless sound. "Tessa, did you buy the Stonehaven house before or after you married him?" 2 years before, I said, "with my own money, from my first big acquisition bonus." "And is his name on the deed or the mortgage?" "No, only mine. It's my sole and separate property. He refused to be on it. Said he didn't want the burden of the payments." "Well, his laziness just became our silver bullet," Lila said. She leaned forward. "In this state, a spouse has 0, and I mean 0, right to grant occupancy to a property they do not own. It doesn't matter if he's the King of England. He cannot give away, rent, or license a property that is not his. His license to occupy is legally equivalent to a toddler writing 'I own this' in crayon. It's meaningless, and his affidavit is, therefore, perjury." She tapped the folder with my name on it. "They just gave us the final piece we needed. They escalated. Now, we end it." As Lila predicted, the press release hit the next morning. The Northcrest Post, a local tabloid known for its sensationalism, ran a front-page story. I saw it on a newsstand as I walked to my office. The headline was crude and enormous: "Heartless CFO evicts sick sister." They had used Evan's old Facebook photo. The story painted me as a cold corporate shark who had chosen new furniture over suffering family. It quoted Parker Sloan extensively, who lamented the lack of compassion in modern finance and how his client, Brianna, was suffering night terrors from the blaring, inescapable alarm. The war of public opinion was in full swing, but Lila had already been moving, securing the objective, factual truth. "They are building a case on feelings," Lila explained. "As we prepped our response, we are building one on facts. In a courtroom, facts win." For the next week, the evidence Lila had been gathering solidified into an unbreachable wall. First, the Stonehaven HOA, Mrs. Petroff, incensed by the tabloid's insinuation that her community was inhumane, provided Lila with a formal, notarized letter. It stated, in no uncertain terms, "Per Stonehaven bylaws, Section 4.b, all long-term residents, defined as any individual residing on property for more than 7 consecutive days, must be registered with the management office by the homeowner of record. The homeowner of record for 12 Stonehaven Grove is Tessa Morgan. Solely. No registration request was ever filed by Ms. Morgan or Miss Brianna Vale or Mr. Caleb Vale." "That," Lila said, sliding the letter into our file, "negates the guest argument." Second, the ADT transcript. The audio file of Evan's attempted social engineering was chilling, but the dry-typed transcript was even more damning. Operator: "Sir, you have failed the security verification. I cannot provide the verbal passphrase." Caller: "Male, identified as Evan Morgan. This is ridiculous. I am the homeowner. My wife is away, and my family is coming to stay. I need the code." Operator: "I show the primary homeowner as Tessa Morgan. You are listed as a secondary user, but you do not have authorization to change passphrases." Caller: "This is my house. Just give me the damn code." Operator: "I cannot. The call is terminated. He identifies himself as the homeowner, Lila pointed out, highlighting the line in yellow. A direct, provable lie, not just to his wife, but to a security firm. This is evidence of intent. He wasn't just helping his sister, he was actively trying to bypass a security system he knew he had no right to control. Third, the final nail from Northcrest Movers. The manager, subpoenaed for a deposition, was eager to cooperate, angry that his company had been dragged into a domestic mess. He provided the full, signed, work order. Full move-in, 12 Stonehaven Grove. He confirmed the inventory. He confirmed the instructions to place the sleigh bed in the master bedroom, and he confirmed, under oath, that his crew had been instructed by Brianna to hurry up because the owner was in a long meeting and they wanted to be settled before she got home. Lila looked at me across her desk. The file was now 3 inches thick. "They're done," she said. "Their suit is based on distress from being caught. Our case is based on a documented, multi-week conspiracy to commit fraud, trespass, and unlawful occupation." She turned to her computer. "Their lawsuit is an offensive move. Ours will be a counteroffensive. Parker Sloan wants to play in the press? We're going to drag him into a deposition and make him defend perjury." She drafted the counter-complaint. It was the most beautiful, ruthless document I had ever read. It was not a defense. It was an attack. "We are filing, in response to their frivolous suit," she dictated to her paralegal, "a counter-complaint against Brianna Vale, Caleb Vale, and Evan Morgan." "Evan too?" I asked. "Especially Evan," Lila said. "He's the co-conspirator. We are suing on 3 counts. Count 1, civil trespass. They knowingly and unlawfully entered your property. We are seeking the maximum statutory damages. Count 2, conversion. They intentionally and unlawfully took control of your personal property, namely your garage, and handled your possessions with the intent to deprive you of their use. We will be itemizing the cost of the security refit, the deep cleaning, and the locksmiths." "And count 3, she said, a grim smile touching her lips. "Defamation per se, against all 3 of them, Evan's Facebook post, Brianna's messages to your colleagues, and this new delightful tabloid story, which we can trace directly back to Parker Sloan's press release. We are alleging malice, and we are seeking significant, punitive damages for the harm to your professional reputation." She filed it electronically at 4:55 p.m. "They wanted $25,000 and an apology," Lila said, closing the file. "We are now officially seeking $250,000, all legal fees, and a court-ordered retraction." The emotional chaos was over. It had been quantified, documented, and weaponized. They had wanted a spectacle. I was about to give them a clinical, devastatingly precise execution. Filing the counter-complaint was like dropping a rock into a still, murky pond. The ripples were immediate and chaotic. Parker Sloan, Brianna's media-hungry lawyer, was suddenly silent. The tabloid stories stopped. My guess was that he had never expected a defense, let alone a $250,000 counteroffensive backed by a ream of evidence. Lila, however, was not content to wait. She operated on the principle of overwhelming force. While they were still reeling, she filed a motion to compel immediate depositions for both Brianna and Caleb. "We have them on the hook for perjury, conspiracy, and defamation," she told me over the phone. "They think they can spin this. I want to lock down their stories, under oath, before Parker Sloan has time to coach the lies out of them." Sloan, true to his arrogant style, agreed. He probably thought he could rattle me, that he could perform for the court stenographer and bully Lila into a smaller settlement. He fundamentally misunderstood who he was dealing with. The deposition took place in a sterile conference room at a neutral law firm. It was the first time I had seen any of them since the day of the invasion. I was present, as was Lila. On the other side of the long, polished table sat Brianna, Caleb, and Parker Sloan. Brianna was attempting a look of frail victimhood, her clothes drab, her eyes puffy. Caleb just looked terrified, a large, useless man sweating in a cheap suit. Lila was a master. She began with a series of soft, sympathetic questions, her voice a calm, neutral instrument. She asked about their eviction, their financial hardships, their distress. Brianna leaned into it, her voice cracking as she recounted the trauma of the ADT siren. "It was so loud, so awful," she sniffled, dabbing at a dry eye. "I thought we were under attack. I still hear it in my sleep." "That must have been very frightening," Leia said, her tone dripping with false empathy. She let the silence sit for a moment. Then she pivoted, her voice becoming steel. "Ms. Vale, who gave you the key to my client's home?" Sloane objected, asked and answered. It was her husband. Lila smiled. "It's a deposition. Counsel. I can ask it all day. Who gave you the key?" "Evan," Brianna snapped, her victim act vanishing, replaced by her usual petulance. "And when did your brother-in-law, Evan Morgan, give you this key?" "I don't know. A week or two before. He said we could use it when we needed." "When you needed," Lila repeated. "And on the day of the incident, October 10th, who directed you to enter the house at exactly 2:47 p.m.? A flicker of panic in Brianna's eyes. She looked at Sloane, who gave a tiny, imperceptible shake of his head. "No one directed me," Brianna said, a little too quickly. "We were just stopping by to see the place." "Stopping by? With a 15-foot U-Haul and a master bedroom suite?" Lila didn't wait for an answer. She turned her gaze, cold and intense, to the weak link. "Mr. Vale," she said, addressing Caleb. He physically jumped. "Your wife says you were just stopping by. Is that your testimony?" Caleb looked at Brianna. He looked at Sloane. "Look at me. Mr. You are under oath. Perjury is a crime. Why did you enter my client's home at 2:47 p.m.? We were supposed to," Caleb stammered. "Supposed to? Who told you to be there at that time?" "It was Evan," Caleb said, his voice barely a whisper. "What did Evan tell you?" Lila pressed, leaning in. "What were his exact instructions?" Parker Sloane saw it coming. "Objection, badgering the—" But Caleb was already talking, the words tumbling out in a rush of panicked confession. "He told us to just go. He said it was fine. He said to get the movers in and get it done," he said. "He said Tessa was in a big company meeting and would be stuck at her office until at least 7 o'clock. He said by the time she got home, we'd be settled, and she'd just have to deal with it." The room went profoundly, absolutely silent. Brianna's eyes were closed, her face a mask of fury. Parker Sloane was staring at his own client with undisguised contempt. Caleb looked like he was about to be sick. Lila leaned back, a small, satisfied smile on her face. "Stuck in a meeting until 7:00 Alloc," she mused, as if to herself. She looked at the stenographer. "Got all that, did you?" She then looked at me. I held her gaze, my face a perfect, cold mask, but inside, a new, chilling question was forming. How did he know? That evening, I sat in my home office, the one I had fought to reclaim. I stared at my computer. Caleb's words echoed in my head. Stuck in a big company meeting. I had never told Evan the specifics of my work schedule. He knew I was a CFO. He knew I worked long hours, but he didn't know the difference between a Q2 forecast review and a regular staff meeting. The meeting he had referenced was the most sensitive, high-level meeting of the quarter. It was on my calendar as Q2 forecast review, C-suite only. The invite list was my CEO, our COO, and 2 board members. It was not forwarded. It was not discussed. So how did Evan know about it? I thought back. We had a shared family iCloud account. One he'd set up years ago. I never used it. I lived in my corporate Outlook ecosystem. But Evan, he was always trying to sync our lives. On a hunch, I went to the kitchen and retrieved the old iPad from the bottom drawer, the one we hadn't used in years. I plugged it in. After a few minutes, the screen flickered to life. And there it was. I opened the calendar app, my entire corporate life, populated in neat, color-coded blocks. My C-suite only meeting, my SEC filing review, my board leadership dinner. He had, at some point, linked my work Outlook calendar to the shared family iCloud. He had a direct, live feed of my every move, my every meeting, my every commitment. He knew exactly when I wouldn't be home. My violation wasn't just physical, it was digital. It had been happening for years. I checked the iCloud login history. One primary device, this iPad, but another login, dated just 1 week before the invasion, an iPhone, the IP address. I ran a quick trace. It geolocated to a 3-block radius in North Crest, right where his mother, Meredith, lived. He had been at his mother's house, not just packing for his trip, but monitoring my schedule, waiting for the perfect window. I called Lila. I told her. "Tessa," she said, her voice grim. "It's worse than you think. I just got the supplemental logs from ADT." "What logs?" "I asked them to pull all door open-close events for the 2 weeks prior. Even when the alarm was disarmed. Just in case. Well, guess what? In the 4 days Evan was supposedly packing at his mother's, the back door sensor at your house was triggered 18 times, all between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. I didn't understand. What? Why? He was running drills. "Tessa," Lila said, her voice hard. "He was coming over from Meredith's in the middle of the night. He was testing the door, seeing what kind of notification it sent, seeing if it sent an alert even when the system was off. He was probing your defenses before the main attack, and he was doing it while he was looking at your calendar. This wasn't negligence. This wasn't a weak man being manipulated by his sister. This was a cold, calculated, premeditated conspiracy, with my husband as the architect." Lila didn't wait. The next morning, she filed an emergency motion for expedited discovery and a preservation order for the cell phones of Evan, Brianna, and Caleb. She cited the deposition, the calendar, the ADT logs, and a significant risk of spoliation of evidence. She argued that, as co-conspirators, they would now be actively deleting texts, call logs, and emails. Parker Sloan fought it. He appeared in court, blustering about privacy and calling it a vindictive scorched earth tactic by an estranged wife. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Avery Locke, read Lila's motion. She read Caleb's deposition transcript. She looked at the ADT logs showing a man testing a door at 3 a.m. "Mr. Sloan," the judge said, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is not a fishing expedition. This is a follow-up to evidence of a conspiracy. Motion granted. All 3 individuals will surrender their phones to a neutral forensic expert by 5 p.m. today to create a mirrored image of all data from the past 60 days. Sloan's face went white. The fallout was instantaneous, the reality of the law, not the emotional, muddy family law Evan was used to, but the cold, black and white, criminal consequences law had finally hit him. That night, my phone rang. His name, Evan. I stared at it. The first call he'd made since the cease and desist. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. He had left a message. I put it on speaker. His voice was not angry. It was not arrogant. It was the voice I hadn't heard in years. It was the voice of a small, terrified boy. Tessa. Hi. Look, this has all gone way too far. It's insane. Lila is insane. Suing me? Suing my sister? Making us turn over our phones? This is a family matter, and it's just a mess. Parker Sloan is an idiot. I'm firing him. We can fix this. Let's just talk, okay? Just you and me. No lawyers. We can sort this out. Internally, like we used to. There's no need for any of this. It was just a stupid misunderstanding. Please, just call me. A stupid misunderstanding, like we used to. The old code. The words he used to use right after he'd done something awful. The words that meant, let me gaslight you into submission. I listened to the message twice. I saved the audio file. I labeled it Evan Wavering, MP3. I forwarded it to Leah. I did not call him back. The time for his internal resolutions was over. The evidence was doing all the talking I needed. The Redwood County Courthouse, Department 9, was not built for drama. It was a functional, sterile box of beige drywall, acoustic tile ceilings, and the stale smell of old coffee and institutional floor wax. It was a room designed to leach all emotion from human conflict, to reduce passion and pain to filed motions and docket numbers. I sat to the left of Leah, my spine straight, my hands clasped on the cool laminate table. On the other side of the aisle sat the unholy trinity, Evan, Brianna, and Caleb, Parker Sloan, their attorney, sat beside them, shuffling papers with a theatrical flourish. Evan wouldn't look at me. He had aged 5 years, his face puffy, his eyes darting between Parker Sloan and the woman who sat in the front row of the gallery, glaring at me, his mother, Meredith. Judge Avery Locke entered, the same judge who had granted the preservation order for the phones. She took the bench, looked at the case file, and then looked at us over the rim of her glasses. Her expression was one of profound, bone-deep impatience. "Mr. Sloan," she said, her voice flat, "this is your motion to dismiss Ms. Morgan's counter-complaint and your client's original suit for emotional distress. You may begin." Parker Sloan, a man who clearly believed in the power of his own voice, stood and buttoned his jacket. He was performing for the back row. "Thank you, Your Honor," he boomed. "What we have before us today is not a high-stakes corporate crime. It is not a conspiracy. It is a simple, tragic family misunderstanding, blown out of all proportion by an individual with limitless resources and a shocking lack of compassion." He gestured toward me, a move of practiced pity. My clients, Ms. Vale and Mr. Vale, were in crisis. They were evicted. They had nowhere to go. Their loving brother, Mr. Morgan, offered them shelter. That is all. A simple act of family loyalty. He paced. In response to this act of kindness, Ms. Morgan did not call her husband. She did not ask her family to wait. No, she chose the most extreme, the most punitive, the most excessive response imaginable. She weaponized, Your Honor, a home security system against her own sister-in-law, terrifying her. She called the police. She filed for restraining orders. And now, she is suing them for $250,000. He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial rumble. This is not justice. This is a legal bludgeon. It is an estranged wife's vendetta. Plain and simple. We are here to ask the court to stop this grotesque overreaction, to see this for what it is, a domestic spat, and to dismiss these vindictive claims, and to recognize the very real emotional trauma my clients have endured. He sat down, looking satisfied. Leah stood. She was not a performer. She was an executioner. She walked to the large digital display screen set up to the right of the judge's bench, a place usually reserved for complex forensic evidence. Your Honor, Leah began, her voice a precise, clear counterpoint to Sloane's bluster. Mr. Sloan speaks of a simple misunderstanding. I'm glad he did, because we have prepared a timeline that proves, with digital, time-stamped precision, that this was one of the most complex, premeditated, and documented misunderstandings this court will likely ever see. She picked up a remote. The screen lit up. Mr. Sloan argues this was a last-minute plea for shelter, Leah said. Let's look at the evidence. We begin on October 4th, 6 days before the invasion. A new image filled the screen. It was a call log from the Stonehaven HOA. Exhibit A, Your Honor, a sworn affidavit from the Stonehaven HOA manager. It details a call from a woman identifying herself as Brianna Morgan, who inquired about new resident parking passes and gate access. When told only the homeowner, Tessa Morgan, could authorize this, Ms. Vale became hostile, claiming she was the new lady of the house. Sloan objected. Hearsay! It is a business record. Counsel, sit down. Judge Locke snapped. Lila clicked. October 5th, Exhibit B, the United States Postal Service online portal, a screenshot of a permanent change of address form, filed by Brianna Vale, to have all her mail forwarded to my client's address. An attempt to establish a legal tenancy. Lila clicked again. October 7th, Exhibit C, an affidavit from Northcrest Movers. They were not hired to move a few bags. They were hired, and I quote, for a full-service move-in. The deposit was paid, and the booking was confirmed. The air in the room was changing. The narrative of a desperate family was dissolving under the cold light of Lila's timeline. And now, Your Honor, we come to the event itself. October 10th. Leia's voice was sharp. Mr. Sloan claims my client weaponized her alarm system. Let's be clear about what that system recorded. She nodded to the bailiff. A tense silence. Then, the sound. Beep, beep, beep. It filled the courtroom, quiet but insistent, a digital heartbeat counting down to a crime. I saw Caleb flinch, a physical recoil. I saw Brianna go rigid. And then, the voice, an automated, booming voice that echoed off the hard walls. This is ADT security. An alarm has been triggered. Please state the security phrase immediately. The courtroom was silent, forced to listen to the audio of the break-in. We heard the scuffling. We heard Caleb's panicked, "It's not working." And then, clear as day, we heard Brianna's shriek, not of terror, but of frustration. "He lied. The alarm's going off. Just come on. She's in a meeting. She'll never know until we're in. Get the truck up the drive. Now." Lila stopped the audio. The silence that followed was heavy and damning. "She's in a meeting," Lila repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Not the words of a terrified guest, Your Honor, the words of a co-conspirator who has been told the coast is clear. She clicked to the next slide. It was the invoice from the movers, blown up on the screen. Exhibit D, the inventory list. The full-service move-in was not for a guest room. I draw the court's attention to item 034, king-size cherry wood sleigh bed, and the special instructions, provided by Ms. Vale. Place all items from inventory 034-037 in master bedroom. A small, choked sound came from the gallery. It was Meredith. Why were they so confident? Lila continued, her voice like a drumbeat. Why did they believe my client would be in a meeting? Why did they target her master bedroom? Click. The screen was filled with an email. My stomach turned. Exhibit E, Your Honor. An email from the defendant, Evan Morgan, to the defendant, Brianna Vale, sent at 8 a.m. on the morning of the invasion. Lila read it aloud, her voice merciless. Subject, the move. I told you. Tess is locked into her Q2 forecast review. She never leaves those. She will not be home before 7 p.m. Go at 3:15. Just get in and get settled. She can't do anything once you're in. It's family. A collective gasp from the few people in the gallery. Parker Sloan was staring at his desk, his face crimson. Evan had sunk so low in his chair he had almost disappeared. And finally, Lila said, in case Mr. Evan Morgan and Mr. Caleb Vale attempt to claim they were just helping, we have their own words. Click. The screen changed to a video feed. It was the footage from Caleb's deposition. We all watched the video Caleb, his face slick with sweat. We heard the audio of Lila's off-screen voice. What were his exact instructions? And then we all heard Caleb's confession, booming in the courtroom. He said Tessa was in a big company meeting and would be stuck at her office until at least 7 o'clock. He said by the time she got home, we'd be settled, and she'd just have to deal with it. Lila stopped the video. She turned to the judge. The image of Caleb's terrified, confessing face was frozen on the giant screen behind her. Your Honor, Lila concluded, this was not a misunderstanding. This was a premeditated, multi-week conspiracy to commit fraud, to establish illegal tenancy, and to steal my client's home. They did not just ring the doorbell. They laid siege. Mr. Sloane's motion is an insult to the court, and my client's counter-complaint is not just valid, it is a necessity. We will not be withdrawing it. Lila walked back to our table and sat down. I risked a glance across the aisle. Brianna was staring at Caleb, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. She looked like she wanted to murder him. But my gaze was drawn to her face. It was no longer puffy with feigned sadness. It was a pale, chalky white, the color of ash. She knew she was finished. From the front row of the gallery, I heard a choked, furious whisper. It was Meredith, Evan's mother, her hands clenched into fists in her lap. "It was just helping," she hissed, just loud enough for me to hear. "It was just helping." Judge Locke looked at the frozen image of Caleb. She looked at the timeline. She looked at Evan. Then, she fixed her gaze on Parker Sloane. "Mr. Sloane," the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet, "you have filed a motion to dismiss, and you have sued for emotional distress based on a family misunderstanding. The evidence I have just reviewed suggests civil conspiracy, attempted real estate fraud, defamation, and perjury. I suggest you reconsider your position very carefully." The air in the courtroom was so still it felt pressurized. Judge Locke's words, "I suggest you reconsider your position very carefully," hung in the silence, an undisguised threat. Parker Sloane, who had built his career on bluster, looked for the first time in his life like he had truly, fundamentally miscalculated. He fumbled with his papers, his face slick with a new, panicked sweat. He had brought a knife to a gunfight, and Lila had just revealed a tank. "Your Honor," Sloane stammered, standing on shaky legs, My clients have been through a great deal. This is an emotional matter. Mr. Morgan, as a husband, surely had some perceived authority." "Perceived authority is not a legal defense, Mr. Sloane," Judge Locke cut him off, her voice like ice. "The evidence presented by Ms. Cortez, which you have not refuted, paints a picture not of a misunderstanding, but of a coordinated, multi-week conspiracy." Lila stood, her movement slow and deliberate. She wasn't just a lawyer. She was a narrator, and she was providing the closing chapter. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and resonant in the quiet room. "Mr. Sloane is correct about one thing. This is an emotional matter. It's a case built on the defendant's toxic belief that the word family is a master key, that family is a justification for trespass, that family is a shield against consequences, that family is a legal doctrine that supersedes all other laws of property, privacy, and decency." She turned, just slightly, to look at the three of them, Evan, Brianna, and Caleb. The defendants did not just try to occupy a house, they tried to occupy a life, justifying it all with that one hollow word. What my client has done today is not cruel, as they claim. It is the logical, necessary, and legal consequence of their own actions. We are asking the court to affirm that boundaries are not cruel. They are the only thing that preserves civilized relationships. Lila sat down. Judge Locke looked at me. "Ms. Morgan, you are the plaintiff in the counter-complaint. This is your motion. Do you wish to be heard?" I stood. My legs felt grounded, my hands steady on the table. I did not look at Evan. I did not look at Brianna, who was radiating pure, uncut hatred. I looked directly at Judge Locke. "Thank you, Your Honor," I said. My voice was not the voice of a wife or a victim. It was my CFO voice, the one I used to deliver hard truths to a board of directors. I have only one thing to add. This entire case has been painted as an emotional, family dispute. My colleagues have been told I am unstable. This court has been told I am heartless and cruel. But this was never about emotion for me. It was about data. I held up my hand, ticking off the points. A duplicate key, a forged residency claim, a permanent change of address, a utility transfer request, a full-service move-in order, and an email confirming my work schedule. This is not a family squabble. This is a list of premeditated, hostile acts. I let my hands rest on the table. I am not suing my relatives, Your Honor. I am defending my home. I am protecting my assets. I am drawing a line that the defendants refuse to see. I am asking the court to make that line clear, permanent, and very, very expensive. I sat down. A desperate, choked sound came from the other side of the aisle. Evan stood up, shoving his chair back. Sloan tried to grab his arm, but Evan shook him off. Your Honor, he pleaded, his voice cracking. I just wanted to help my sister. That's all. It was just a temporary stay. I told her she could stay for a few weeks, in the guest wing. That's all. I never agreed to any of this other stuff. Brianna, she must have misunderstood. I only ever gave permission for a temporary stay. It was just temporary. This was his last stand, the "it was all Brianna" defense. Lila was on her feet before he had finished his sentence. Objection, she said, her voice sharp as glass. The defendant is perjuring himself. His sworn affidavit and his own emails contradict that statement completely. But if the court is in doubt, I have a simple question for Mr. Morgan. Judge Locke nodded. Her eyes narrowed at Evan. Proceed, Ms. Cortez. Lila turned to Evan. She was not cross-examining. She was dissecting. Mr. Morgan, you just swore to this court that you only gave permission for a temporary stay. Is that your testimony? Yes, that's right, Evan said, grabbing the lifeline. Then please, Mr. Morgan, Lila continued, her voice dangerously pleasant. Explain to the court why, for a temporary stay, you and your sister conspired to file a permanent change of address with the United States Postal Service. Explain to this court why you attempted to transfer the utilities out of my client's name and into your sister's. People who are staying temporarily do not try to steal the power bill. Evan's face collapsed. The blood drained from it. He stared, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound emerged. He looked at Lila. He looked at the judge. He looked at his sister. He was trapped, impaled on the spike of his own lies. Judge Locke had seen enough. Mr. Morgan, let me remind you of the law. Since your counsel has apparently failed to, she said, her voice dripping with contempt, this is not community property. The deed is solely in Ms. Morgan's name. You had no more legal right to grant your sister occupancy than the bailiff. Your permission was, and is, legally void. Your affidavit is, therefore, perjury. Sit down. Evan didn't sit. He fell back into his chair, a broken, empty suit. Parker Sloan, seeing his entire case, his fee, and potentially his license circling the drain, leaped to his feet. His voice was a high, panicked squeak. Your Honor, in light of this clarification, perhaps a brief recess to discuss a potential settlement? We are prepared to withdraw our suit immediately, in full. It was the last, desperate move of a beaten lawyer. He was offering to drop his own client's frivolous suit if we would drop ours. Lila stood slowly. A settlement? She said, her voice full of theatrical disbelief. So, just to be clear, counsel, after accusing my client of extortion, defamation, and emotional cruelty, you now wish to settle? After we have proven, with evidence, that your clients are the ones who committed fraud, defamation, and conspiracy? Lila turned to me. I met her gaze. I gave her the slightest shake of my head. No, Your Honor, Lila said, turning back to the judge. We will not be settling. We are not withdrawing our counter-complaint. We are seeking a judgment. The finality of that word, judgment, hit Brianna. The legal maneuvering was over. The game was lost. She snapped. The frail, sniffling victim vanished, replaced by the shrieking, entitled creature from my ADT feed. She leaped to her feet, pointing a trembling finger at me. You, she screamed, her voice cracking. You did this. You tore this family apart. all because of your stupid house. You are a cruel, heartless, empty bitch. You have everything, and you wouldn't share. You wouldn't help. We needed help. And you recorded us. You humiliated us. You are a monster. Caleb was trying to pull her down, but she was wild. Her face mottled red and white. You're cruel! You're cruel! The bailiff was already moving. Order, Judge Locke commanded. Counsel, control your client. Lila waited, perfectly still, until Brianna was forced back into her seat, where she dissolved into loud, ugly, gasping sobs. In the ensuing silence, Lila spoke again, her voice cutting through the residual sobs. Your Honor, she said calmly, as if Brianna's outburst had never happened. Ms. Vale accuses my client of being cruel and humiliating her. This is the core of their entire case, that my client's response was the real crime, not their invasion. She picked up a small digital audio recorder from her table. Ms. Vale, in her suit, claims $25,000 in emotional distress from this humiliation. It's an interesting number, because it's not the first time she's demanded money. Sloan, who had been whispering to Brianna, looked up, his eyes wide. Your Honor, Lila said, I have one final piece of evidence. It is a recording of a phone call Ms. Vale made to my client on the day of the incident, after the police had escorted her off the property. I believe it speaks directly to her emotional distress. She pressed play. My own voice, quiet, recorded, hello? And then, Brianna's, not distressed, but filled with rage and calculation. Tessa? What the hell is wrong with you? Do you know how embarrassing this is? I ought to sue you for emotional distress, but I'm willing to forget it. You caused this. You can fix it. Send me $5,000 and we can make this all go away. Lila stopped the recording. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was suffocating. If Lila's timeline was the intellectual nail in their coffin, this, the raw, undeniable audio of a shakedown, was the final, emotional hammer. The family argument was dead. The victim argument was dead. All that was left was the ugly, naked greed. Brianna's sobbing had stopped. She was just staring, mute, her mouth open. Parker Sloan looked at his notes. He looked at the ceiling. He looked anywhere but at the judge. Judge Locke removed her glasses. She rubbed the bridge of her nose. Her eyes closed for a long, weary moment. She looked at Sloan. She looked at Evan, at Brianna, at Caleb. She looked at me. I have heard the arguments, she said, her voice heavy with finality. I have reviewed the evidence. I have heard the audio recordings. Frankly, I have heard more than enough. She gathered her files. This court is adjourned. I will deliver my ruling at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And Mr. Sloan, a word of advice. Tell your clients to be here, punctually. She stood and swept out of the courtroom, leaving a thick, heavy silence in her wake. The walk into Department 9 at 10 a.m. the next morning felt different. The air was not electric with confrontation. It was thin, sterile, and still. It was the air of an execution. We took our places, me, Lila, across the aisle, Evan, Brianna, and Caleb. They looked hollowed out. They had not slept. Meredith sat behind them, her face a rigid mask of denial. Parker Sloan looked ill, his bravado gone, replaced by the pallor of a man who had already lost and was just waiting for the bill. Judge Avery Locke entered, sat, and opened the file. She did not look up for a full minute, reviewing her notes. Then, she fixed her gaze on the far wall, as if addressing the law itself. I have reviewed the evidence presented in the case of Vale versus Morgan, and the counter-complaint Morgan versus Vale, Morgan and Vale, she began, her voice a cold, formal monotone. I will rule on both. First, regarding the initial suit filed by Ms. Brianna Vale and Mr. Caleb Vale for intentional infliction of emotional distress. This court finds the claim to be not just without merit, but frivolous. The evidence is irrefutable that the plaintiffs were, at the time of the alleged trauma, in the active commission of a criminal trespass and a conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. Parker Sloan flinched at the word criminal. One cannot sue a homeowner for the distress of being caught by a security system while attempting to illegally occupy their home. The judge continued. The suit is dismissed, with prejudice. The plaintiffs are barred from refiling this claim in any court. Brianna let out a small, strangled sound, like a dying bird. Second, the judge said, turning the page. Regarding the counter-complaint filed by Ms. Tessa Morgan, this court finds overwhelming and incontrovertible evidence that the defendants, Brianna Vale, Caleb Vale, and Evan Morgan, did knowingly and with malicious intent conspire to illegally deprive Ms. Morgan of her property. She looked at each of them, one by one. This court finds the defendants liable on all counts: trespass, civil conspiracy, and defamation. She paused. Lila and I did not move. As such, the court orders the following. Effective immediately, a 1-year no-contact and harassment order is granted. Brianna Vale, Caleb Vale, and Evan Morgan are prohibited from coming within 500 yards of Ms. Tessa Morgan, her residence at 12 Stonehaven Grove, or her place of employment at Marlin Ridge Holdings. The defendants are further prohibited from any and all contact with Ms. Morgan, her known colleagues, or her legal counsel, by any means, including but not limited to telephone, electronic mail, text message, or any social media platform. She had drawn a digital and physical wall around my life. On the matter of damages, she continued, this court finds that Ms. Morgan's professional reputation was intentionally and maliciously targeted by all 3 defendants. Furthermore, she was forced to incur significant expense to secure her home after the defendants' conspiratorial breach. This court therefore orders the defendants, Brianna Vale and Caleb Vale, jointly and severally liable, to pay Ms. Morgan full restitution for all documented legal fees, all costs associated with the security refit of her home, and punitive damages for the defamation campaign, in the total amount of $185,000. A gasp tore through the courtroom. It was Meredith. Brianna simply slumped in her chair, as if her spine had been surgically removed. $185,000. It was a life-ending judgment. They would be paying me for the rest of their lives. Finally, Judge Locke turned her gaze to my husband. Mr. Evan Morgan, she said, and her voice lost all judicial detachment, becoming something sharp and personal. While your name does not appear on the financial judgment, a technicality of your wife's sole ownership of the property, this court finds your conduct to be the most reprehensible of all. You were the insider. You were the enabler. You betrayed a sacred trust, and you perjured yourself in a sworn affidavit in an attempt to defraud your wife. This court is formally reprimanding you for your conduct. While I cannot rule on your marital assets today, I am noting for the record that your actions constitute a flagrant and malicious dissipation of marital trust. I strongly recommend the subsequent divorce proceedings take this judgment into full account when dividing all community property. It was over. She had not just beaten them. She had dismantled them. She had given me back my house, my name, and my future, all in one clean, legal stroke. This court is adjourned, she said, and banged the gavel. We walked out of the courtroom. Leah ran interference, her hand on my back, as a small gaggle of local reporters, the same ones who had printed Sloan's press release, swarmed us. Ms. Morgan! Ms. Morgan! One of them shouted, shoving a microphone in my face. You just won a massive judgment against your husband's family. Was it worth it? What do you say to people who say you tore your family apart? I stopped. I had been preparing for this question. I turned and looked directly into the camera. My voice was clear, and it did not shake. I didn't tear anything apart, I said. It was already broken. They used the word family as a weapon to justify an invasion. I used the law as a shield to protect my home. Boundaries are not cruel. Boundaries are just mature love, demanding to be respected. Lila smiled. No further statements, she said, and guided me through the crowd. leaving them to swarm the wreckage of Evan's family as they stumbled, hollow-eyed, from the courthouse. That evening, I returned to Stonehaven Grove. Lila had arranged for a locksmith, the same one from before, to do one last, final refit. He was a quiet man with kind eyes. He handed me 2 new, high-security keys. "These are the only 2 in existence, ma'am," he said. "Thank you," I said. I took them. One went on my key ring, the other, the spare. I walked to my biometric safe in my office. I pressed my thumb to the scanner. It beeped, and the heavy door opened. I placed the single solitary spare key inside and closed it. The only person who had a spare key to my house was me. I sat at my desk and pulled up the ADT portal. Lila was on the phone with me, on speaker. "You're sure?" she asked. "Tess, you should have at least 1 emergency contact." "I do," I said. My fingers moved over the keyboard. I deleted Evan. I deleted Meredith. I deleted every family contact. I added 1 entry, Lila Cortez, legal counsel. I set her as the sole primary contact for any and all alerts. As if summoned, a new email popped up in my inbox. The subject, ADT Security, Final Report. It was brief. "Ms. Morgan, per the court order provided by your counsel, we have concluded our investigation. The unidentified number that made multiple attempts to social engineer your account has been traced and has ceased all activity. Your security logs are clear. Your system is fully operational. All zones green." The system was green. All zones. A small, automated prompt appeared in the ADT app. "Your temporary security passphrase has expired. Please state a new, permanent security phrase." I thought for a moment. The old one had been sanctuary. It had been a lie. I leaned toward the speaker on my desk. My voice was quiet, but firm. "My house, my rules." The system chirped. Passphrase accepted. System status, armed. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in months, I was not analyzing a threat. I was not reviewing a legal brief. I was not looking over my shoulder. I was just sitting. I ran my hand along the arm of my desk chair, a simple, ergonomic chair. I thought of Caleb's voice, captured on the camera. "Where do you think she keeps the good stuff?" They had seen my life as a collection of assets. They had appraised my home, my furniture, my time, and found them all wanting. They saw a cash cow, not a person. But as I sat there, in the quiet, I realized it was just a chair. It wasn't an asset. It was part of my life. It was the place I sat to do the work that I loved. This house was no longer a fortress to be defended. It was simply my home. I stood and walked out of the office. The heavy, solid core door whispered shut behind me, the hydraulic hinge giving a soft, definitive click. I stood in the hallway, looking out the tall glass window at the single Japanese maple in the courtyard. I realized I had been breathing shallowly for weeks, a high, anxious breath from the top of my chest. I took a deep breath. It went all the way down, filling my lungs, my stomach. It was not a breath of relief. It was not a breath of fear. It was a breath of finality. It was the clean, quiet hum of a system that had been purged of all malware and rebooted. From that silence, a new, orderly life began. One defined not by their chaos, but by a boundary written in law and enforced by my own will. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We'd love to know where you are tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts so we can all connect. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Like this video and show your support by hitting that hype button, so this story can be heard by even more people.